Hi, I'm Mick Barry. Welcome to the 3 Minute Therapy Podcast. The head of the 3 Minute Therapy Podcast is Dr. Michael Edelstein, who wrote a book called 3 Minute Therapy. It's based on rational emotive behavior therapy, which is a therapy that began in the early 1950s, formulated by Dr. Albert Ellis. Albert Ellis was practicing psychoanalysis and found it incredibly ineffective and wanted to come up with therapy that would help people. So he devised what originally was rational therapy, then rational emotive therapy, and it became rational emotive behavior therapy. And it focuses on what people's thoughts are that create their disturbance. It is not the things that happen to us that make us mentally disturbed, but it's the way that we view them that makes us mentally upset. And that is based upon demanding things to go the way we want them to go, such as demanding that I must never fail, or other people must do what I want them to do, or the world must be easier than it is. If we are thinking this way, then we will drive ourselves nuts. Whereas if we can think, well, I'd like to have what I want, but nothing says I have to have it. The world is not an easy place. I want it to be easier. But if it's not, it doesn't do me any good to demand it not to be easy, but to accept that right now it isn't easy and I could do better to work with it to see what I can do to make it easier, but that there's no reason it has to be easy. And there is also no reason that people have to do what I want them to do. Michael, is there anything else you want to say about rational emotive behavior therapy, or REBT for short?
Yeah, that's pretty complete. I'll just add that then the third must, Mick, you mentioned a demand on oneself, a demand on others, and then also some people may have a demand on the conditions of their lives. My life must be fair, easy, and hassle-free, and that leads to procrastination and addictions.
I think I said that life must be easy.
Uh-huh.
What's that?
That is possible.
Yeah, okay. But let's not debate that. Let's move on. So today's topic is rational emotive behavior therapy and acceptance. And REBT advocates for people to accept reality. And then once we accept reality, then we are better equipped to change reality to the way we would like it to be. And particularly with acceptance, one of the most common problems people have is self-acceptance, accepting ourselves as fallible human beings. We want to not make mistakes, but all indications are that we will always be human and always be capable of making mistakes. And that means that sometimes we are going to make mistakes. And accepting ourselves as fallible human beings is key to being able to live anxiety-free regarding the way that we look upon ourselves. There is a big phrase or two words that people use all the time, self-esteem, which is rating ourselves. If you look up the word esteem, it is about placing a particular value on something. Rational emotive behavior therapy encourages people not to rate themselves, not to look upon themselves as a good or a bad person, but to fully accept themselves as a fallible human being with all of the foibles that go along with that, while trying to be as mistake-free as we can. And so that is, I wanted to bring up this today because achieving self-acceptance is not, most people find, not an easy thing to do. It is a simple thing to do, but as Albert Ellis has said, it's simple, but it's not easy. Michael, is there something you would like to say about that?
Yeah, just to put it, what you said another way, is to rate your behaviors. We're not saying don't don't judge your behaviors. Some therapists will say don't judge. All judgment is wrong. But we're saying judgment about your behaviors makes sense, because if you judge your behaviors as poor, then that gives you an entree into doing something about it. So rate yourself, don't rate yourself, don't rate your, and don't judge yourself, but judge your behaviors in terms of your goals, in terms of what you would like to achieve in life, and whether your behaviors tends to aid those goals or tends to sabotage those goals.
Well said, Michael. I want to point out that Michael made a little bit of a mistake there that you might have heard. He initially said rate yourself, but what he meant to say, and he corrected it, was rate your behavior. And that's a perfect example of us making a mistake. We are fallible human beings, but we correct it. We don't worry about it. Now, is that okay that I mentioned that, Michael?
Yeah, I often tell my clients, no one's perfect. Even one day I'll make a mistake, but that just proves it.
Yeah. In fact, I think we could say throughout the day we make mistakes. Now, the thing is, in accepting ourselves, Michael, can you say what is self-acceptance? Can you define it for us?
Well, self-acceptance means not putting yourself down or judging your total self, but separating your acts from your total self. And some people interpret that as you're not responsible for your acts because you're separating it. Well, you're not separating in the sense that you are responsible for your acts. So don't say it doesn't matter at all if I make mistakes, but rather if I do make mistakes, then that proves I'm an imperfect human. And now what can I do to how can I do something about that in the future?
Okay, now when I asked you to define self-acceptance, I believe you said it means not rating yourself. Could we define it in terms of, rather than not doing something, can we define it in terms of doing something?
That's a good question. And I really couldn't put it, I don't know how to put it any differently than we already have in terms of, no, I don't have an answer to that. It's a good question. Do you?
I think I do, yes.
Yeah, what's that?
Self-acceptance is saying to ourselves, I can live with myself as an imperfect person. I can live with myself. It is something I can deal with. I don't need it to be any different. Now that's putting it in terms of a negative, but and it's still effective, but I can live with myself and I accept myself as a fallible human being, and it's doing something positively. I've found one thing that's helped me a great deal with REBT is recognizing that I can be determined, and there's some things that it's bad to be determined if we're off on a bad pursuit. We want to admit the folly of it and give it up and not be determined to continue the folly of the pursuit. But if we're doing something that's helpful to ourselves, it's good to be determined to continue with it. So I have said to myself, I am determined to accept myself. I accept myself right here, right now. I accept myself as something I decide to do. I'm going to decide to do it because it's the best thing for me to do, and I can decide to do what is the best thing for me to do. I can live with myself. I am imperfect. I accept myself as imperfect. I'm going to try not to make mistakes, and I accept myself as a fallible human being, but I fully accept myself. I accept myself, and just emphasizing it that way.
Yeah, I call that, what you're saying, Mick, 3-second knockouts, which I write in my book. And some other 3-second knockouts are, I made a mistake, tough luck. I'll do better in the future. Or I made a mistake, it's not the end of the world.
I'll try to do better in the future.
Yeah, I'll try to do better in the future, and I probably will. Since I'm an imperfect human, that means I act poorly at times, but I act well at times.
Yeah.
So those are other 3-second knockouts you could use.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, almost everybody, I think, that is watching this video would be committing mistakes that won't be catastrophic. I do think it's possible to make mistakes and to perform bad behavior that would be irreversible. However, most of the people, in fact, I would venture to say just about 100% of the people don't fall into the category of people that are going to end up with life sentences in prison for murdering somebody. Those would be catastrophic mistakes in which you can't reverse the outcome of it. Even under those circumstances, you could do the best that you could do to try to make the best of a bad situation like that's that extreme. And one example I can think of is Leopold and Loeb. I forget which one it was, but they committed a horrible murder and ended up with life in prison. But one of them went crazy in prison, I think died at a young age. But the other one worked a great deal to improve prison reform, and he improved the conditions of prisons. So even under those extreme circumstances that are irreversible, you can do things that are positive.
Yeah, right. I think that was Leopold you're referring to. And also, when you say very rarely do you do things that are catastrophic, well, but you could do something that's catastrophic, we distinguish between doing something that's catastrophic, which I agree, we could do if it's a very, very bad mistake. If you walk in front of a car in traffic and get yourself killed, that would be pretty bad. But we distinguish between catastrophic and awful, terrible, and horrible. Nothing is, no matter how bad, nothing is awful, terrible, or horrible, because no matter how bad it is, it could be worse. You could have walked in front of a car yesterday rather than today, so it could always be worse.
Well, also, you could walk in front of a car and just kill yourself, or you could walk in front of a car and cause the driver to run into a telephone pole and kill himself or herself. So that even that circumstance could have been worse. That's true.
Exactly.
And so what you're saying is off the idea that people usually have when they use the word awful is that it is as bad as possible, and nothing is ever as bad as possible.
Yeah, and not only as bad as possible, but even more than bad as possible, which, as you said, is impossible. So awful is one of those words that are a fiction. They don't exist, just like must and should, and I can't stand it.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, with accepting ourselves, I have been a master at not accepting myself and a master at putting myself down and hating myself because I make a mistake. So this is something that I continually reinforce on a daily basis. I am acceptable. I accept myself. It's the best thing for me to do. I accept myself, and I am going to attempt to do behavior that is helpful to me and helpful to other people and helpful to the world. And when I make a mistake, I want to still accept myself. It is easier to correct a mistake when we accept ourselves. Would you say that's true, Michael?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, right. So self-acceptance is beneficial in every sense that I can think of. I can't think of any negative outcomes of it. Can you, Michael?
No, as long as you understand what self-acceptance is, as we're explaining in great detail, and don't confuse it with other things, like you're not going to make a mistake, so you accept yourself in that sense.
Yeah, and I'll also say about self-acceptance, and I'm focusing on self-acceptance because I find it's of the three probably the toughest for me to achieve, though of course I do achieve it. But with self-acceptance, it's possible to start berating myself for not being more self-accepting and to tell myself I'm lousy, I'm no good because I'm not accepting myself, and to not accept myself for not accepting myself. So even in self-acceptance and achieving self-acceptance, we can be fallible in how we achieve self-acceptance. So we want to accept ourselves as infallible and accept ourselves as fallible in recognizing that that we are fallible. We can be fallible in recognizing that we're fallible.
That's very true. And this podcast is on self-acceptance, but acceptance, radical acceptance, can be extended to accepting others with their fallibility and accepting our life situations with its problems.
Yeah, I think this podcast is actually on acceptance in general, but I'm focusing on self-acceptance. So anyway, just to give people something to use, I've found that determination in accepting myself and accepting that I'm going to accept myself imperfectly, so that if we find ourselves, I'm coming down on myself, I'm berating myself, how can I do that? I'm a fallible human being. Okay, I accept that I can berate myself. What can I do now? All right, hey, I just did it. I accept myself as somebody who can have trouble accepting himself, but now I accept myself as that, and then I can focus on the primary self-acceptance and determined to accept myself and rate my behavior, separate myself from the behavior. The behavior is good or bad. I am never good nor bad. I'll wrap this up, Michael, because it's going on and on, but I once read a paper by Albert Ellis, I believe it was 22 Ways to Stop Putting Yourself Down. Well, I have found that there's a much easier way, and it's just called the future. If you remember the future, then no matter what we do, we can always do better in the future. And no matter how bad, no matter how good a thing we do, we can always do badly in the future. So whatever we do, there's always the future. So nothing is guaranteed. So no matter how good my behavior is, I don't need to inflate myself and call myself a great human being. No matter how bad my behavior is, I don't need to call myself a worthless worm. The future always is a possibility to straighten things out or possibly make a mistake. So it is a great way to stop rating ourselves by just remembering the future.
Okay, I'd like to endorse what you said a few minutes ago, Mick, about wrapping this up, because we don't want to beat a dead horse. And again, Dr. Michael Edelstein, clinical psychologist and author. My co-host here is Mick Berry. We're here just about every week. And I'd like to thank Chris Rossini, our tech engineer. Comment below if you have thoughts or questions. If you'd like to volunteer and be a guest, please feel free to do that. I think we're going to have a guest coming up in another week or so. Give us a thumbs up if you like this and suggest subjects. Volunteer, as I said, and subscribe to the 3-Minute Therapy podcast imperfectly to do what, Mick?
Well, and I just want to say, not to beat a dead horse, but the reason I'm emphasizing it is it's a lifelong practice. Accepting ourselves is a lifelong practice to continue to continually work at it and get better and better at it and reinforce it to stay on the rational side of life.